have an intro slide, but I'll give a quick. So I come from Washington, D.C., where I've worked in the federal government, both on the contractor side and as a federal employee, bringing Agile into the federal government. And as soon as you do that, then of course you run into, oh wait, we also need to work on contracting. So my background is actually IT. But once I became a Fed, they're like, yes, we need someone who knows what they're doing, so go help on this as well. So it was an other duty as assigned that took up a lot more time than I had expected, but learned a lot of stuff along the way. So I'll give a very brief federal acquisition, what is unique, different, scary, exciting, whatever, about the federal process, and then I'll talk obviously my stories. But throughout this, hey, look, it's Agile. We have this over this, and I said, okay, what does that mean in the federal procurement space? What are some ideas that I'm going to pull out? One of them, show over tell. But I said, okay, let's look at these and create a set of. So me, yes, I've been a contractor and a federal employee at different points. I actually. Yeah, I actually started in the state of Washington as a contractor, and then moved to federal in 2003. And then I worked as a Fed for Citizenship and Immigration Services, which deals with all of the. So if I say CIS, because it's just habit, it's Citizenship and Immigration Services, all of the legal immigration into the United States. So I was brought in to help transform USCIS to Agile. As soon as I got there, they said, hey, go work on this procurement that we have, help do the evaluation because you actually understand what you're talking about, which was horrible because at the time we had 50 I had to go read 40, I and a small team had to go read 40-some 50-page documents to figure out who we should hire to be our next Agile developers, and I was not a very pleasant person to be around at that time because there were a lot of people who didn't get it, and they wrote that way. But over the course of the 4-ish years that I was a Fed, I actually developed and released contracts ranging from $90,000, which was actually probably one of the hardest contracts I had to get out, to $1.5 billion. And we did the $1.5 billion in less time than we did the $90,000 one. Doesn't make any sense. As a contractor, I've worked on that side, creating, writing, being part of demos, being part of orals, being part of the procurement process from the other side. So I've had experience on both sides, and I'd say I enjoy them both, but that's probably a little bit too much. My Twitter's actually J.A. Seckel, not J. Seckel, but I apparently mistyped it in there. So if anyone wants to tweet anything, J.A. Seckel, I'll respond at some point, not while I'm up here. So let me give a little bit of history about federal procurement about procurement within the federal space. It's a long process, and I don't know the process here per se, but within the U.S. federal government, we have what's called the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, or if you're in the Department of Defense, the DFAR, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. On average, if a contract is under $250,000, it takes 158 days to award it. That's an awfully long time for what is for the U.S. federal government not a very large amount of money. Anything that's over 25 million takes 669 days on average. So it takes 2 years in order to get to actually awarding a procurement in the federal space. And these numbers are a couple of years old, but they've been coming down, but still, it is significant. If I told you need to write requirements today for a project that's going to start in 2 years and probably won't be delivered for 7, you would say, you don't understand Agile delivery, do you? So this is not an effective way of delivering. In addition to that, many contracts within the federal government can be protested. So if I didn't win, I get to say, hey, I don't think that was a fair evaluation. And any protest adds, in general, at least 100 days to my cycle. So I have 3 more months, even after I think that I've awarded something, before I will actually likely get a developer on the ground. other problems in that cycle as well, beyond just procurement and security and other things. But we'll deal with procurement today. In addition, the federal acquisition process, well, because it's so long, that means that we need to add extra reviews to make sure that everything's right, which is part of what makes it longer, which means that we need to have more reviews. It's a non-virtuous cycle. Easy example of this, GSA Enterprise Infrastructure, software infrastructure, but infrastructure solutions, they released a draft in 2015. They actually had, so if I've released a RFP as a request for procurement, if I've released a draft in 2015, that means I was probably working on it for at least 6 months, if not a year before that. I actually got a procurement out to get bids in October. I was not personally in this one, but in October, and the contract awarded in July of 17. That's a year and a half from the time that we put the procurement out until they actually awarded a contract. We have to get better. And we are. Let me be very clear, we are. And I will give my horrible example of the $90,000 contract that I did, because I still don't know why it took so long. I was actually doing a pilot for Agilecraft. If Agilecraft is a software ALM Agile lifecycle management tool. It actually is at a higher level, sits on top of Jira or Raleigh or whatever else. But I wanted to do a pilot with it because I thought that it would be very useful. We had a bunch of different tools in use at USCIS. It took me a year and a half to 2 years from the time that I said, yes, I want to do this, before I could actually get the funds and everyone on board with, yes, we're going to do a 3-month pilot. And then it took me another 6 months in order to actually award this contract to do a 3-month pilot. And at the end of the 3-month, in which we awarded firm fixed price, I knew it was going to be $90,000. There was no question about that. And at the end of the 3 months, there were some things that hadn't quite gotten done yet, and Agilecraft that were in the original scope, and Agilecraft said, yeah, just extend, no extra money, no nothing, just extend the end date, extend the period of performance by, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, so that we could finish the few things that were left, and our contracting, for no cost, and our contracting office said, no, you can't do that. They said, no, that's the end date. You have to end on that date. So we did. We ended on that date. And then we had sales calls with Agilecraft for a couple of weeks in which we finished some of the demos and some of the other things that we were doing there. I will say that Agilecraft now is actually in USCIS and we're using it. But that process in order to just do a 3-month pilot was way too long. So we had to fix it. Oh, look. Neat. So that's one example, and I'll give the others. I'll talk about the 30 days to an Agile team that we didn't quite hit. But so what are the 4 things that if I take the manifesto and rewrite it for procurement, what are the 4 things that I think are important? Show capabilities over tell them what you can do. I don't care. I don't want to hire the best authors to write my software documentation. I want to hire the best developers. So I want them to show me what they can do in terms of development. I want to do things that are short and small over lengthy and large. Although we were having the discussion last night, I do not want an Agile roller coaster built, but I do want Agile software built, and I want things being done in a fast, small way. I was actually at one of the things that we often run into in software is, yes, but I need this really big program. It was a couple of years ago at DevOps Enterprise, where the guy from Barclays Bank was saying, quit scaling your Agile, descale your work. Like, instead of trying to define that I need all of this software developed, what's the piece you really need right now? And go start working on that. And work on the pieces that you need. Use microservices architecture. Use the ways in which we can get there today to actually allow you to descale your work rather than having to try and scale to large teams, large procurement, large development. I've renamed this a couple times. Maybe it needs to get renamed again. Commitment to act over commitment to terms. When I'm in delivery and I have a contract, I should be much more care about the delivering of the value than what exactly every single term in the contract is. I have been on both sides of the table, and it is not fun on either side of the table as a contractor and as a Fed. I say at the end of a contract, but at a deliverable in the contract, you're happy because this is exactly what was in the contract, and therefore I delivered exactly what you wanted. I'm not happy because this doesn't meet my need, but it meets the contract, and therefore you have to be happy with what's No, I want a commitment to act. I want a commitment to actually change when I need to change. I have a great example of this that I'll talk about now. When I was at USCIS, before I became a Fed, I was actually an Agile coach for one of the teams run by another company, but they asked me to come in as an Agile coach. And they were transforming their delivery to Agile delivery because they knew that that's the direction that the federal government wanted to go, and that's the direction that they were going. Their contract was written for waterfall delivery. They were held accountable for delivering documentation, for delivering on the set schedule, not an Agile type schedule, but meeting their deliverable deadlines in a waterfall fashion. And they said, that's nice. We talked with the contracting officer. We're going to figure out how to do the incentives later because we know that the incentives are messed up as we move to Agile. We'll figure those out, but we're going to move to Agile now because that's what we need to do in order to deliver. Like, that's commitment to act over commitment to terms. I'm continuing to evolve and negotiate with, I'm going to not ignore the contract, but I'm going to say, yeah, there are pieces in here that we will change as we go forward. There are some other ways that I definitely will talk about at USCIS that we change some of this and some of the ways in which we do it. And then finally, the most, I think it's the upper left and the lower right. You bookend the important things, right? Most important, valuable outcomes over cost, scope, and schedule. We care about the results, the value that's delivered. We don't care that you met what was predefined as cost, scope, and schedule. If I'm in an Agile world, my cost and schedule should be fixed because I'm running time boxes. So I can tell you exactly when every time box is going to be done and what they'll cost. If I'm running Kanban, a little trickier. But so these are the 4 things I come up with, and I'll delve into each of them a little bit more. I have pretty graphics now. So I'll talk about this 30-day experiment that we did at USCIS. Our CIO, who is Mark Schwartz, said, yeah, procurement is horrible. We need to do things to make it better. Josh, help. And we came up with an experiment. We're like, we need to figure out how fast we can issue a contract. And the objective was 30 days. Small contract, lots of focus on being able to get through the process in 30 days or less. Initially, so Mark's real objective was 30 days from the time the business says, I have this need, until we have a team on the ground. We said, that's nice, but we're not going to be able to get there. We can acknowledge that right up front. But let's go from the time that we drop the RFP. So the time that we say out to business, hey, we need this work, until the time that we've awarded the contract in 30 days or less, which on the federal side is very fast for federal government to move. So everyone was bought in, including, because large government agencies, the IT group, the procurement group, different groups, entirely different chains of command. So we said, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to get it out in 30 days. We dropped the RFP. We did evaluation as fast as we could. We went through legal, separate group again. We went through legal, we went through procurement, we went through all of the groups, and we were very successful at our 30-day experiment at getting a contract awarded under this experiment in about 82 days. So, and you're like, 82 days is not the 30-day objective. I acknowledge that. On the other hand, I think that we were very successful at doing this experiment. And I identify successes. We identified the places where we had waste in the system. We identified places where we needed significant improvement in order to actually get to 30 days. We identified the things that we needed to continue to change in order to get there. And so for people who know a little bit about federal contracting, this award was on a BPA. So this award was on a contract that existed, but you had to compete off of those. So it wasn't going out to the general public and going through all of those. But that was the the objective. I will tell you there is another contract now that is specifically for Agile coaches that I helped create at the Department of Homeland Security. We ran it through USCIS, but it was for all of the Department of Homeland Security so that they can procure coaches. I know that they are running procurements off of that, so awarding task orders off of that on the order of about 2 weeks turn from the time that they put it out until the time that they actually make an award. So we got under 30 days. It's not entirely for a team, it's for smaller coaching, but we're getting there and we're getting better. So why else do we want to do short? And this is true regardless of where you are. Longer time cycles, increase costs, increase risks, increase uncertainty, honestly for both sides of the equation, for both the contractor community and for the federal community. If I award these big contracts that take many years to deliver, many years to procure and to deliver, then as contractors, you have to put all of the eggs into that basket and hope that you win, because they're only coming out every so often. And so I want to be able to spread the wealth, as it were, within the federal sector. And doing those shorter contracts allows me also to change contractors, because when you start working and you have a contractor that's not delivering, if it takes you a year and a half to get a new contractor in, you're going to try and keep working with that person, with the contractor who's not delivering, even if it's very frustrating and you're not making significant change, because they know that they're safe for at least a year. And the last 2 months they can make some changes that will help them win. And longer encourages what I call kitchen sink contracts. So the same is true in a development cycle. The longer my period of delivery is, the more things that the business wants to put in it, which makes my delivery longer because I have to meet that scope, which means that I want to put more things in it. And that's how we got to delivering once a year or once every 18 months. And now we're like, no, let's reverse that trend. Smaller delivery, more frequently, more successfully means that you trust me, that you don't have to put everything in, and I can continue to do that. The same is true in contracting. Show versus tell. So the first part of show versus tell may sound a little weird to say. Orals are actually a better than written. And I think there are many times when orals make sense instead of a complete demonstration kind of thing. Several of the contracts that we have, we awarded what's JETS, and I don't remember what the acronym stands for, sorry. I can maybe look it up, but is our portfolio maintenance. And so we were hiring contractors to manage a business portfolio, and within that portfolio, you had mainframe, you had Java, you had .NET, you had database stuff, you had all different kinds of pieces. And I'm like, okay, so if I do a demo here, which piece of it am I having them demo? Because I'm not going to be able to demo every single particular part. On the other hand, if I do an oral session, then I have a much better understanding, and I can make sure that they understand how portfolios work and how Agile works. So we did orals, and the orals that I like and that I prefer are different than I'm going to come in with a slideware presentation and tell you that this is all the things you have to do. Instead, the orals are, you get here and you have to bring your key personnel, who are people who are dedicated to, if they win, they will be on the contract. You have to bring your key personnel, and I'm going to give you a list of questions when you get here, and then I'll leave the room for an hour so that you can prepare your responses and you can chat about it, whatever. But I'm going to take your cell phones, I'm going to take outside communication. You have to have the knowledge in the room with the people who are going to be on this contract. Okay, so that orals is a little closer to actually ensuring that the knowledge exists within the contract. So I much prefer those kinds of orals with key personnel. Second are actual demonstrations. I've done demonstrations a couple of different ways. One is you bring the company in and you give them a 4-hour block, and when they get there you say, yes, and here's your product owner, and they have a set of user stories. Show us what you can do in the next 4 hours. we've warned you ahead of time. You're bringing your computers in. You hopefully have your AWS stuff and your CI/CD pipeline set up before you get there because you're intelligent. And so we actually do demonstrations that way. We've also given code out beforehand for 48 hours before you come in to do orals. And then we have a set of user stories and a product owner to modify that code. We've done that mostly with open source. So we'll take some open source down, we'll make a few tweaks in it, we'll then release it to the particular vendors that are going to be bidding. Or demonstrations where you've got 5 days or 7 days or whatever the period of time is. Here's a set of user stories. You guys go develop something, but you're not engaged with the government while you're doing your development. This is, you do your development and figure it out. I personally have a slight preference for come in and you've got 4 hours to do something, partly because I want to see how the team interacts with a product owner. I don't just want to see what you can figure out on your own out in the boondocks, or who you can hire to write really good code. Like, not who's actually at your company, but who you can subcontract to write some really good code to be submitted for your demonstration. And you're like, oh, but the amount of time that it takes to do orals. So on the $1.5 billion procurement, which was called FLASH, which was Flexible Agile Services for the Homeland, originally called Raptor, which I preferred, which was rapid acquisition of teams on Raptor. But I wasn't allowed to do that one. But within Flash, we actually only we did demonstrations in a 2-page tell us about your staffing, and then cost was separate, but was just a demonstration for the actual evaluation. And we had 111 vendors who put in who came and did demonstrations for Flash. We did that in 4 weeks. All 111, you had I think it was 4 hours for Flash, 4 or 6 hours for Flash to do those demonstrations. We actually ran 2 teams of evaluators and three different vendors each day for each of those 2 teams of evaluators. And you were moving around from room to room as you were doing evaluation. Had a product owner in the room all the time to provide feedback. And yes, when they came in, we said, here's a set of user stories. And if they turned to the product owner and said, hey, what's the highest priority on this? The product owner said, here's a set of prioritized user stories. On the other hand, if they just started working on stuff, then they might spend time on things that really weren't important. And it was deliberate because you have to work with the product owner. So I love demonstrations. I love doing them, setting them up. The trick, particularly in federal procurement, but I would argue in most procurement, if you're going to use demonstrations, is I have to come up with a set of new problems for people to solve every time I do a demonstration. If I ask you the same question every time, eventually some people who have continued to bid will learn how to answer that one question, but won't necessarily have learned how to deliver in an agile fashion. And finally, videos. We actually did a short video, 3-minute video for Flash that was advisory. So they submitted a 3-minute video basically saying, we asked them 3 questions. It's like, really those 3 questions were, do you understand Agile? And a bunch of people, we said, yeah, you probably shouldn't prime on this. And most of the people that we said you probably shouldn't prime on this didn't. There were a couple that did, and no, they weren't awarded contracts. And it wasn't because of their video, because we said it was only advisory, but they really didn't get it. The video is part of the way in which the Agile coaching contract has been able to do very short awards, because they basically say, here's a problem. You have 3 or 5 minutes. Give me your solution, what it is that you would do as coaches in order to solve this problem. Because as a coach, that's the kind of thing that I want you to be able to do, is to tell me how you're going to solve a problem. What are the things you're going to apply? How are you going to apply them? So those are the 3 ways in which I prefer to show, demonstrations being my favorite, but the other 2 definitely having a place within show versus tell. There's a clock. Okay. Commitment to act over commitment to terms. So I think that everyone would agree that collaboration is very important as you're delivering anything, but particularly software. the question, and it's, hey, we need to collaborate between the business and the and the IT. Business and IT absolutely need to collaborate. Yes. In federal, you also need to collaborate with procurement folks. You need to collaborate with your oversight, your security folks. You need to collaborate with the 508. 508 is our Disabilities Act that all of the sites have to comply with in order to be released. So there's a bunch of people that you need to collaborate with. And that collaboration is key, particularly as you're starting to make changes, because as I make changes, I want procurement to be aware of them, the contracting officer to be aware of them, and to be not caught off guard, or to say, oh no, you can't do that. There's something in the contract that won't allow you. One of the things that we did at USCIS is we actually made some significant changes in the way in which we procure, like what we put into the contract. We put into the contract, let's see, contract requirements, not system requirements. So USCIS actually started to take back the IT integrator role from our contractors and said, no, we're going to be responsible for defining what it is that needs to happen, how it needs to happen. What we need contractors who are good at doing development. So we're going to hire Agile teams who can do development. And when we hire them, when they get here, we're going to tell you what the system requirements are in order to meet our mission need. So rather than putting the system shall or other other system level things into our contracts, we removed that and we said, yeah, this is what we're going to be responsible for ourselves as the government, and we need you guys to work with us in order to deliver that. But I'm not going to put it into a contract, because now if I want to change that number, I have to go through a change order process, which is a not insignificant process within the federal government. So we changed to go to team capabilities rather than to system capabilities within our contracts. And I talked about moving towards portfolios. We absolutely moved towards portfolios. And we said, hey, we need you to be able to meet these technologies. And by the way, here's an appendix with the systems that you will need to support right now. But in the future, those systems may evolve. We may have new systems. We may change what technology is under. We may have you change what technology is working with some of these systems. But the systems are an appendix and not part of the contract per se. So if there's an extra system that gets developed and is moved into O&M, they can take it on because it's within their business portfolio and within their set of delivery pieces. So that allows us to significantly reduce the cost of change, because we all know that change will happen. I have yet to come across an IT program that didn't have change, particularly late in the process when you thought you were done. Not that you're ever done in contracts. And I mentioned this before, the commitment to terms, I met the contractual terms and therefore you must be happy. No. You actually delivered value. You actually worked with us and we made the changes, we delivered, and that's what will actually make people happy, not system requirements that I wrote into a contract. I can give a horrible example of this that I was actually part of, unfortunately. For a while, I worked at the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. Their job is to ensure that no rad nuke devices enter the United States unauthorized. Kind of important. You cannot measure failure at that particular office because you cannot fail. But we had a specification that was written into the contracts that for radiation detectors, that every large cargo truck coming into the U.S. had to pass through. And in that specification, we specified down to the number of radiators that you had to have, radiation detectors that you had to have in every portal. And it's like that. Actually, given that one company decided to use a different material to do their radiation detection than what was assumed in the spec, it wasn't a valid requirement, but we had to go through it was probably at least a 3 to 6 month process of discussing and figuring out how to change the specification because it was in the contract, rather than actually experimenting and learning whether or not this different material was better or worse than the detection we needed to do than the existing material. Instead, we spent a lot of time working with the contract and how to change this from you need 3 detectors to 2 is okay. But these guys were using 3 and these guys were using 2. System requirements don't belong in contracts. System requirements belong in the discussion, belong in the system. Contractual requirements belong in contracts. What are the contractual things you need to meet? And I actually agree with putting contractual objectives, like some of the mission objectives. We're trying to get to this into your contracts, but not down to the system level, not down to, hey, the system has to do this. It might, but we might change what it does. Delivering value versus cost, scope, and schedule met. How many people here have had a contract exactly on scope, on schedule, on budget, and it still didn't do what you needed it to do? Yeah. So we need to stop doing that because and of course you always have, or you have overruns, and because it doesn't meet what you need it to do. So you need to do collaborative delivery, working between the Fed and the contractor at how to change these things. How many people here know what impact mapping is? Okay, good. Several of you. I highly recommend using impact mapping as a way of actually focusing on valuable delivery. Impact mapping is a technique that is way too long for me to give a tutorial on, but is a technique to identify the highest priority things and then what things will impact those highest priority items. In the federal government, we actually at USCIS we had some fun experiments with impact mapping and actually using X teams, which are truly cross-functional teams, not just IT. We had one of our coaches, the IT delivery team, a couple of feds from the business side, all working together to meet an objective. At USCIS, there's a lot of focus on forms because everything has a form. It's the federal government, but everything has a form, and part of you wanted to reduce processing time for those forms, which really meant that you could actually get to the point of, awarding people green cards faster, or awarding them citizenship faster, or determining their refugee status faster, because these are important things that affect people's daily lives. So when I say, oh yeah, it was all about forms and processing times, yeah, but those processing times were very important. It takes years to go through that process. And so if we can reduce it by even months, it is significantly helpful, and it reduces our backlog. But they were given the objective of go reduce the processing time for this form. And so they did an impact mapping, and they said, okay, so these are the things that we need to change. And they made some changes in the IT system. They made some changes in their business process system. They made some changes in the office, in the way in which they did interviews. All of those changes reduced the processing time for the form, but they were given as a team the objective, reduce the processing time for the form. I don't care how you do it. And so it was a great way of using the impact mapping to figure out what's the best way, rather than saying we know that it's software. We didn't know it was software. We knew that we needed to get better. And yeah, so like I said, this is about the collaboration between the Fed and the contractor. Part of this focus on value over cost, scope, and schedule is, particularly in the government space, it's that change from a focus on profit to a focus on mission. You were saying, you pull the profit out of it and get everyone focused on in the same direction, get everyone focused on the same thing. So it's very important to get the Fed and contractor both focused on mission, rather than the contractor is focused on whether they have their numbers and how can I squeeze the last dollar out. And the Fed is, is I don't trust the contractor because they're trying to make the most money, so I have to worry about the contractor. And neither of them are focused on the mission at that point. And they come into battle. And instead, you want to figure out ways of taking them and focusing them all on the mission and delivering value out to your end users, whoever they happen to be. There's a quick story I'm going to, too far. There we go. I'll leave that up, and I'll tell. I have plenty of time. Awesome. I will tell another quick story or two because that's easy. At USCIS, we're focused on forms. We're focusing on delivering value and making them fast. We do that through experimentation, and this is part of why I believe in Agile, why I believe in delivery out to production, because you never know till you're out in production. We had great UX folks. Within the federal government, they've started a program called USDS, which is United States Digital Services, in which they pull on what are called term appointments from Google, Facebook, Amazon. Commercial side, they pull people into the federal government for 2 years or 4 years to help transform federal government. So they're kind of consultants, but they're actual federal employees. So we had USDS UX folks working on this form that we were improving. We had our high quality delivery teams working on this. We had the folks on the business side who said this is what we need to do. And there was a form that currently, and part of our objective is to get everyone out of paper on this program. And there was a form that out in the field took 15 minutes to process. It's a change of address form. It's not really that big of a deal, but we need to get everything to automated so that people can go on through their phones or through a website to actually accomplish this. We created the new form. We had all the right people working on it. We put it out to the field, and we changed the processing time from 15 minutes to an hour. It was great, or not. This is part of why with the procurement stuff, with your delivery, it doesn't count till it's in production. Now, we promptly went, okay, we need to go rethink some things, and fixed it so that it didn't take an hour for them to process that form. But until you're in production, you don't really know what things are, which is why in a contract, if you say, hey, I need these things, well, I might. I want to develop contracts that are flexible enough to allow me to take the thing that I put into production that takes an hour, that I've quadrupled the time that it takes to deliver, and fix it, and not simply say, well, that was exactly what we wrote in the requirements to deliver out to the field. The other piece, particularly for USCIS and for other agencies that have started on this path of delivering in an agile fashion, is we have we have programs and products that deliver on a very fast basis. Our largest program, ELIS, which is our electronic information system, that is all of the forms moving to an electronic basis, has 20 teams on it delivering application software, and they deliver to production daily, which in federal government is, I think, reasonably well. Mark Schwartz, the CIO, who was the CIO, he's now with AWS, actually said, well, that's a good start, because his benchmark is Amazon, Google, Netflix, et cetera. But for a federal procurement to deliver daily, but if I'm delivering daily and I'm creating new contracts that take me a year to get the contract in, I've changed the system so much by the time that I have new contractors in that I can't have put explicit requirements. And I've changed even some of potentially underlying technologies. I said, hey, MQ series isn't really the right thing that we use here. We're going to move to Rabbit. Okay, but in that contract that we wrote 6 months ago and is now halfway through getting delivered, we told them they had to use MQ series, and now what do we do? Well, it's why we are developing these flexible contracting strategies, why we're pushing for being able to deliver faster, because it's important for that speed of delivery to be able to to pull the contract at that same pace. And then eventually we're also working on HR and our other groups, because it's something that I've noticed about Agile in any organization is that once you get the IT doing that, everyone who's around it starts to have to change, or you're going to kill it, and then it expands out from there. At Sevatec, we're actually in the middle of a business agility transformation, changing the way in which we do everything across the board at Sevatec. So I'll stop there for questions, because, yeah.
All right. So first, a big hand of applause